What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports hall of fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is EY Global Chairman and CEO, Carmine DeCibio. Under his leadership, EY has thrived, managing a global workforce of 400,000 team members, serving clients in 150 countries, and generating an impressive $50 billion in revenue last year. Originally from Italy, Carmine brings a unique perspective to his role, drawing from his experiences playing soccer and baseball to foster a spirit of collaboration and excellence at EY. Make sure to visit corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes, where you can find my favorite quotes from today's conversation and a thought-provoking reflection question to inspire your application of today's insights.
If it's driven out of HR, that's a program. Now, I mentor many people, Don, and it's part of the culture at EY. That's the way we've all been trained, frankly. One of the things that we always looked at in terms of getting promoted to partner was what kind of following did you have? Just going through the motions with people, that's just not going to cut it. Mentoring has to be built into your culture. Otherwise, it's nothing more than a program. If it's driven out of the actual business, that's mentorship.
Carmine, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Don. I'm really excited to be here. I'm just excited to talk about sports and competition and EY, all my favorite subjects.
All of which intersect, which is what makes this so perfect. We started this podcast 3+ years ago, and from the day we started, you have been a dream guest right there at the top of the target list because you were the prompt of this podcast. It was EY that did a study that showed that 94% of women in the C-suite played sports, 52% played collegiately. Those numbers shocked me. I've always believed in the ties between athletic participation and business leadership success. But the statistic, did those numbers shock you?
They didn't really shock me, Don. Those statistics are actually going to be higher and higher and higher as women play more sports. And not just sports, but part of teams, even dance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
To me, what women learn by being part of teams, it's incredibly important. The teamwork, how do teams really operate? How do you succeed? How do you win? The competitive spirit in terms of doing well at what you're doing. And the nice thing in terms of sports is the results are pretty clear. You either win or you lose. And some things aren't so clear, but in sports, things are clear. There are leaders on teams. You could see who steps up and who doesn't step up. And leadership around the teams are so important. And then just pure leadership. You don't have to be the best player on the team, but you have to show that you're part of the team. My daughter, Anna, played collegiate lacrosse at Colgate, my alma mater.
Wow.
And she loved it. She absolutely loved playing, loved being part of the team. In fact, today, her closest friends are from her lacrosse team.
Mm-hmm.
Today, she's in banking. She works at one of the major banks. And every time I talk to her in terms of, how's it going, Anna? How's it going at work? Her first response is, well, let me tell you, the team did really well yesterday. We closed these deals, and I love my team. And here's who's on my team. The leader is the managing director, and we work with him. And team comes out of her mouth almost every other word.
Boy.
A lot of that has to do with how she's grown up and how she's been part of sports and part of a team.
And we've actually had a couple of EY leaders in the past on this podcast because I know you value organizationally participants in athletics. Many of your employees have an athletic history. I'm fascinated by that.
Well, Don, everything we do is team oriented. So when we're working on projects with a client, when we're working on audits, when we're working on transformation projects, it's all about the team. How well is the team doing? How well is the team meshing with the client team as well?
Mm,
Everything that's done at EY in terms of client service is done in an organized team fashion. Obviously, we have our most senior people, our partners who lead the teams, down to managers and staff who execute on a project. It's very, very similar to sports, and it's what's made us successful. Every time we hire people, Don, sometimes people are like, am I going to have to go do this project by myself at XYZ company? No, very, very rarely are you working, quote, by yourself. 99% of the time, you're working with a team. Now, sometimes it's a small team, could be 2 or 3 people, and sometimes it could be 400 people on a particular project. We actually have our employees that are coming out of college, Don. They go through case studies when they interview.
hmm.
Most of the case studies are around teamwork. We really embed all this in our culture, which is what makes it fun to work at EY. It's one of the biggest reasons why people like it here. It's the people they're working with and the team they work with. And the nice thing about EY, Don, is that you're not stuck on one team forever.
Mm.
You typically move around to different clients.
Because an engagement might be complete
Yeah,
and you would then move on to try to be part of some different group doing something different.
exactly. And timing could be different. You could be on a large engagement that takes a longer period of time or a short engagement that takes a week. But that gives you a lot of experience in terms of working with different people and with different teams.
So we've used the word team a lot. I mean, you almost sound like your daughter, Anna.
Yeah, that's true.
You've been part of teams. You've constructed teams. You've watched good ones. You've watched bad ones. For those of us listening who are, one of the things I actually often think the word team is overused in the world of business, that people refer to teams that are really nothing more than a group of people that have the same employer, but they're not a team in the way that you and I appreciate that word. For those of us who are out here trying to build teams, and we might be handed a group of folks that previously all were independent actors, what are some of the things I need to do to take a group of individuals and build them into a team?
That's a great question, Don. You want your team to be diverse, not necessarily their skin color or their ethnic background, but you want them to be diverse thinkers. This is in the business world. In the sports world, you want them to have diverse skills.
You don't want a bunch of point guards
Exactly.
trying to take on Joel Embiid.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, too soon.
Yeah, that's too soon. I'm still suffering. But
Yeah.
you want people that think different from one another, people who have specific skill sets that are needed for whatever you're trying to solve, whatever the issue is,
Mhm.
whatever you're working on. You certainly want the right technical talent. That's what really gives a team a lot of power in the business world. With that, you also want a team that drives your mission, that drives your purpose, that get along with one another.
So I love that diverse thinking, but then looking for specific skill sets that blend.
Yep. And then you want them to be part of the culture, and they need to work together in a longer period of time. So just because you work at the same organization, that's not really a team,
Mm.
to your point. And I know some organizations use this word teammates and so forth.
They just throw it around.
Yeah, they just throw it around. That's a little different. We actually don't use that word. Everyone's just their own individual, but they all work on teams.
Yeah.
As an organization, you want to have a purpose.
Mhm.
There have been many studies done that just show organizations with a purpose do better. They do better financially. They do better in terms of stock price. They do better in terms of retention of employees. So we put together our purpose now about 11 years ago when we developed a new global strategy. And it's really around building a better working world. And it means exactly that. We were one of the first business organizations to have a purpose. So it took a while for people to understand what that meant. Some people thought it just meant that we need to do charity work as well as what you're doing at work. That's not at all what we're thinking. Everything EY does today should be somehow building a better working world. Well, how does that work? If we have a new college recruit that's in our audit practice, they're part of a team, they're executing on an audit, and by them doing that audit and then eventually issuing a clean opinion, they're giving the capital markets confidence, okay, that the numbers and the financials of that company are accurate. That's part of building a better working world. That's part of the capital markets working the way they should. When a new person joins us, that person should feel like they are building a better working world.
I love listening to you say that because I think one of the challenges for many people, especially around purpose, is that you think, well, but all I do is audit. Like I read numbers and I make sure that they're good. If you can take that and actually funnel it into this understanding of purpose, audit's pretty darn important.
Absolutely. You have to understand the bigger picture. That's the whole trick here on why you're doing something.
As opposed to just thinking I'm an auditor.
Yep.
You know, you played soccer and baseball growing up in New York. You're on the floor hockey team that won first place in Glen Cove, Long Island, soccer, baseball. You were everywhere. Is there a moment from your young sporting adventures that you still think of today? Every once in a while, just a moment or a team, an experience, a game, maybe even just a locker room moment that you every once in a while just go, you know what? I was blessed to have been there.
Yes, several moments, Don, that I still remember today. Some of them are good, some are not so good. I spent a lot of time playing baseball. I was recruited to play in college at Cornell, actually, which I ended up not going. The school was too big, and I also had arm fatigue at that point. But
Yeah.
there were moments giving up a home run in a crucial game, not a good moment. Pitching a no hitter in a town league, it was a great moment. Having a girlfriend in high school watch me pitch and winning, and then after the game coming to the mound and giving me a little kiss, that was memorable. So there are things like that that I'll never forget. But the memories are all very good.
Although you giving up a home run was the first one you mentioned.
Yeah, because
So
yeah, you don't forget those things. If I'm with any of my buddies or even someone that I meet, or even yourself, almost every person I talk to, if I ask them, hey, do you remember when you were little and you played Little League? Do you remember like someone who threw really hard who you were afraid of to get at bat? Almost everyone remembers exactly who that is.
yeah.
So it's got to be impactful almost to every kid who plays baseball.
Yeah, it's always funny. I laugh about John Kruk and Randy Johnson many years ago when Kruk was like, "Nah, that's okay. I don't need to stand in there for that." And here's a professional baseball player.
I know. Do you remember, Don? Do you remember when?
Of course I do. Yeah, there's always that one kid who you're swearing they didn't check his birth certificate.
Exactly.
Now, tell me about pitching.
Well, the thing I enjoyed most is striking people out.
Right.
I didn't throw that hard, but I had a very good curveball.
In high school, that's great.
Yeah. Fooling people with a curveball and striking them out was always a rewarding experience for me. But there was a lot of pressure pitching.
Did you like the pressure?
You know, I liked it when I was able to do well. Generally, yes. I didn't like it. If I got behind on the count, that became more difficult. And, you know, I wasn't a professional. Today, I don't think professional pitchers worry that much of getting behind on the count. I worried a lot about getting behind on the count. And, you know, you're up 2 runs and it's late innings and you walk someone, my coach would go crazy. I certainly remember that. His name's John Delecky. He's still in Glen Cove, I think. I haven't really talked to him in a while, but he was a very, very fair individual. He wanted to win. He played in the minors. So he taught me a lot of nuances around baseball that I know today. If you love baseball, I credit him with giving myself and my brother the opportunity to play at the collegiate level, even though I ended up not playing. But, you know, my brother, he was 2 years behind me. You know, we immigrated from Italy when I was 3 and my brother was 6 months old. My parents are hardworking, blue collar parents, and they're alive today. My dad's 87 and my mom's 85. And they always valued education. My brother and I did pretty well in school, you know, and then the time was coming in terms of going to college. And my baseball coach said something to me. He said, you know, I never really got that involved in pushing people to some of these Ivy League schools, but you guys do really well. Why shouldn't I? And he pushed getting me the opportunity first and then my brother. And even though I ended up not playing in college and not going to the school that I was recruited at, my brother went to Brown,
Mm.
played all 4 years. And in fact, he's 58 now and he's still playing in a baseball league in Connecticut, which is amazing.
I actually often argue that baseball is the greatest analogy into business because it's a grind. In the professional league, it's 162 games just to make it to the playoffs. If you're successful 3 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. All these amazing ways of looking at what you have to do day in, day out in order to be successful. When you think of the things you learned and you think of baseball, how do you apply any of what that sport might have taught you into your business life today?
Understanding the details is important. In business, at a place like EY, you do need to understand the details. You can't just float at 100,000 feet. During your career at EY, this includes myself, in the beginning years, you really understand details because you're in the details. In consulting, in our tax work, you're executing some of that work at the detail level. And that gives you a lot of knowledge going forward. When you do migrate to being a manager, get promoted to being a senior manager, eventually a partner, you could operate at a higher level. But understanding those details are incredibly important. Now, the question we get today is, well, are those all going to go away with AI? No, because you're going to use the technology of AI to actually understand the details even better. We have our own large language model at EY. It's called EYQ. And that's what we're training all our people around is using things like that that make you smarter and smarter with the details. We don't believe that all our jobs are going to go away. Certain tasks are going to go away for sure. They've already been going away, but it should make our people even smarter.
It's like they say, you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you're going to lose your job to somebody who knows how to use it.
Exactly. That's well said.
You know, we found a great yearbook picture of you in the stretch, and you look good in this picture. Found this quote from your high school yearbook where you said, "I want to be a surgeon pitching in the major leagues." Now, that didn't quite pan out,
No.
but I'm assuming 18-year-old Carmine would be excited about the idea that you're CEO of an unbelievable organization. What leadership advice would you give if you got a chance to go back and look at a younger version of you about what they should expect as they try to climb the ladder of a successful organization?
Back then, I did not know what EY was. I didn't even know what the corporate world was. What I knew was when you grow up, you could be a policeman, a fireman, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, the jobs that people know. I was pre med, I was a chemistry major at Colgate. So
Mm.
I was following down the doctor path. I decided not to do that because I actually did an internship during a January term at Colgate. All I did was observe surgery at New York Hospital and go on rounds with doctors. And every person I talked to didn't like what they were doing.
No kidding.
So I said, why would I want to get into this? Went back to school that spring and I'm like, what am I going to do? I probably just want to get into business. But I was already down the path of all these science courses and I was scheduled senior year to do actually a thesis on tin halides, which today I don't even know what they are, but I basically ended up a chemistry major, which is what I was doing. But I obviously decided not to go to med school. And the baseball part kind of fell apart after obviously I decided not to play in college. But senior people at EY, what we believe is that EY gives people a chance to better themselves socially, to better themselves economically. We have a diversity council globally of 50 of our leaders, partners that are in leadership roles and partners that are executing on clients. And of the 50 people, we did a little sample. I said, how many of you knew about EY when you were 18 years old? How many of you, your parents knew about EY or you knew something about EY? Did you know anything about the corporate world? And of the 50 people, how many do you think knew about EY or knew about the corporate world?
Maybe 10?
Two.
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 Wow.
48 had no idea. Okay. That little sample might be a little skewed, but we did a broad sample at EY, and over 50% of the people that responded did not know what EY even was. And I think back at myself when I was 18, I didn't know what EY was. My parents didn't know what EY was. My parents didn't really know what the corporate world was. But then I went to college. I was able to enter the business world. And the way I entered the business world was getting a job at a predecessor firm called Arthur Young.
Mhm.
That was 1985. And that's how it happened. So use advisors, use people that have knowledge, make sure that you cast a wide net in terms of what you want to do. For me, it worked out well, but I think it could work out well for so many more kids if they understand more what's out there.
You were first in your family to graduate from college.
That's correct. That's correct.
So for you, your net really didn't broaden until you got to college.
My net was very small. We immigrated from Italy. We moved to Glen Cove. Glen Cove was a very Italian community.
Yep.
I didn't think there was anything strange about my name until I got to college. To me, it was like John Smith in Glen Cove. But at Colgate, that was a whole different story.
Once you got to EY, did someone take you under their wing? Was there someone that helped guide you?
There absolutely was. There was more than one. A few of the partners started taking me onto their jobs, onto their engagements, and I started to get to know them. There are three that I would point out. Two of them are women partners at the time, which was very unique, and one of them made partner while I was a senior. Eileen Garvey, who I'm in touch with now, and I worked with. Don, you could tell true mentors when they mentor you, and then as your career moves on, they're totally fine with them working for you.
Oh, wow, that's powerful.
That's not easy. But the other one is Ed Pisani. Ed Pisani was more senior. Later on at EY, we started an entire group, de novo, myself and Ed and one other partner. And that group is over $1 billion practice today. So Eileen Garvey, Ed Pisani. And then the other one was a woman named Regina Dolan who passed away. She was one of the first women partners in New York in financial services. And she took me under her wing as well.
Mm.
You know, one of the things that I think EY does a very good job at is looking at who's best for different roles. Some partners are very good in terms of serving a particular client or groups of clients. Some move more down the management track in terms of running parts of EY. I started really working on clients that way, and then I did move more into the management track where some of the others stayed in serving clients. So I give a lot of credit to both Eileen and Ed in terms of seeing what I could do and having the confidence in me being a leader and being their leader. Now, I mentor many people, Don, and it's part of the culture at EY. That's the way we've all been trained, frankly. One of the things that we always looked at in terms of getting promoted to partner was what kind of following did you have? How many people have you mentored? How many people want to work for you?
Wow.
Fellowship and support is incredibly important. It's part of our culture. We don't adhere to our culture. When Arthur Andersen went down, we hired many Arthur Andersen partners around the world. We brought on a lot of partners. And I was sitting there in a room with Ed Pisani and some others as these partners were being onboarded to EY. And we can go person by person and said, okay, this person's going to be a long-term person here. They're going to be a leader here. And this person's going to be gone in a year, either because we're not going to accept them in a year or because they're just not going to feel comfortable in a year. We could tell right away whether they had our culture or they did not.
Mm.
We were about 80% right.
You know, it's interesting. I love the way you talk about mentoring as a culture because there are so many places where there are mentoring programs, but that's
Yeah.
a box you have to check. Talk to me about the difference between a mentoring program and a mentoring culture.
It's a world of difference. Mentoring has to be built into your culture. Otherwise, it's nothing more than a program. Now, we've had programs in the past. We still have programs, but our programs are really just a way to start aligning things because we are very big, but it has to come from the culture. Just going through the motions with people, that's just not going to cut it. If you're trying to push into that culture, you do need some programs that facilitate it, but it can't be just around the program.
It has to be something you feel as opposed to something you're required to do.
Right. If it's driven out of HR, that's a program.
Mm.
If it's driven out of the actual business, that's mentorship.
Wow. Love that. In a business environment that's often driven by competition, you talk openly about the need for collaboration. How do you cultivate that collaborative mindset in such a competitive industry?
We're extremely competitive, but the competition is not internally, it's with our competitors on each one of those clients. It's with the other big four, it's with Accenture, it's with McKinsey. Our teams compete against their teams. Now, you might say, well, you must have some people on teams who are ultra competitive and have sharp elbows and that kind of thing. We really do not tolerate a lot of that. We're a big place. I'm sure you could find a few like that, but we really don't tolerate it. And as I mentioned before, people like that typically do not make it in the long term at EY.
Wow. Don't tolerate sharp elbows. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you did a commencement speech at NYU and you had a great line. You talked about no great change has ever taken place by defending the status quo. You believe that you need to be prepared to fail and even setbacks move the needle.
Yeah. Take chances. Do not be risk adverse your entire life. Life's about taking chances and doing what you believe in. About 3 years ago now, we started looking at strategically where EY needed to be if we wanted to grow more, if we wanted to really maximize our capacity as an overall organization. Because today there's so many conflicts between our consulting practice and our audit practice. If we're the auditor of an organization, we can't do consulting work.
Hmm.
If we're the auditor of an organization, we can't have an alliance with that organization. So the conflicts have become greater and greater. After a lot of analysis and a lot of conversations, we decided that we were going to split the firm between those two businesses. We hired bankers, we hired lawyers, we started separating ourselves and so forth. And the idea would be that the consulting piece would actually become a public organization, would IPO.
Mm.
Now remember, we are 400,000 people, we're in 150 countries, we're a $50 billion organization,
Mm.
and we're a partnership. So we always knew this was going to be difficult. So the name of the project was called Project Everest.
Climbing the mountain.
One of my advisors, when we embarked on this, said, Carmine, I want to tell you two things you need to be prepared for on this. Number one, you are going to have thick skin.
Mm.
Okay. There will be a lot of people and you'll be in the press that'll, some will say good things, some will say bad things. And number two, you've been there a long, long time, but I promise you, you're going to learn more about your business going through this process than you ever imagined. Both those things were very, very true. At the end of the day, a group of partners at EY in the US, more on the audit side, decided that they didn't want to do this. And when we had a vote of the US board, the vote did not pass.
Mm.
We had to abandon what we were trying to do. That was a setback, highlighted in the press. It was obviously a big moment, and it was a big moment for me. It didn't feel good, Don, but it taught me so much, Don,
Mm.
in terms of thick skin. It taught me a lot about how to deal with the press. It taught me a lot about people. It also taught our organization a lot around what's the right type of governance. I mean, now we're changing our governance
Hmm.
because we feel that a small minority made a decision for the majority.
Hmm.
We learned a lot about our business, what it needs to do going forward, and how we need to position ourselves. So, ask me, would you start on this again? The answer is absolutely yes.
Because you became a better business as a result.
We did. And in fact, it's even changing some of the profession because people have understood what value creation means in professional services. So today you're seeing private equity firms interested in professional services. You didn't see much of that before. You're seeing the entire professional services businesses changing. They're taking outside capital. They didn't take that much outside capital before. And that was all because of what we did.
I love it. We're fascinated by the concept of momentum. Those of us who love sports see it when we're watching a particular event. There are sometimes moments where things begin to click and they can work for you or against you, not just in sports, but also in business. Has there ever been a moment where a shift happened that created an opportunity for things to propel a spark that sent you into a full-blown fire?
Yeah. So there's been a few situations where we've created incredible positive momentum. When I first was put into the global managing partner role in 2013, I worked for my predecessor, Mark Weinberger. We developed a strategy. We called it Vision 2020 at the time. It was the first time the organization really had a global strategy.
Mm.
The strategy was around growth in our businesses, it was around our people, hiring all the right talent. And it was a pretty detailed strategy. That created incredible momentum, Don. We drove a firm that at the time was 25 billion to today it's 50 billion.
Wow.
Literally doubled the firm in the last 10, 11 years.
Right.
Okay. The other, I would say in 2016, we embraced innovation and we embraced technology. We embraced the cloud even back then. That was another game changer in terms of creating momentum. And then, believe it or not, the pandemic. We were afraid we were going to be out of business. But in actuality, it created tremendous momentum for us because we were able to use technology that no one really used beforehand. We were able to run our business through Teams, through Zoom, and help our clients. And our growth rates during those years, after we got past the initial shock and just post those years, overall was 14%, and our consulting practice was over 20%. We created tremendous growth. Those were all creating positive momentum going into strategically when we were trying to split. Now, EY with new leadership, with my successor, who I am so proud of, her name's Janet Troncali. She's shaping up a new strategy to create momentum again.
Mm. I love that idea that sometimes even just the focus of creating a strategy can become the spark.
Oh, absolutely.
Because too often we get caught up in our day to day. We're doing all the things that we have to do. We're grinding it out. We're playing 162 games. We're not stopping to create that 7-year vision that is going to double the firm. I love it.
Yeah. See, this gets into my other team, the Mets. I'm wondering what their strategy is.
You know what? You're not alone. I think
know.
most of us are wondering what their strategy is.
I know.
But as long as you got a rich owner, you're good, I guess.
I don't know. I think we really need a strategy.
Hey, Carmine, thank you for giving us so much time, so much energy, and I appreciate you being a corporate competitor with us.
Thanks, Don. I have to tell you, I've read your book. I've gone through Great Teams, 16 Things. The idea of teams to me is incredible. There's much more to do there. And from a gender perspective, I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. I am a huge supporter of women's athletics. It's changing the world, and anything we can do there is incredibly exciting.
What a time right now with Caitlin Clark and all the amazing attention that's being given to women's athletics. It's special.
I think so too.
Carmine, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Carmine, that was so much fun. I can see why he was such an incredible leader. I took 3 great takeaways from today. The first, I loved when he talked about Coach Dalecki, who spent time teaching him the nuances of the game of baseball, how to look for things that might guide the way you would lead in the future. And as he pointed out, that's so true in business too. You have to know the details. The nuances are important as you're looking at the way you might lead in order to be really successful. My second one was the importance of having a mentoring culture, not a mentoring program. They might be a good place to start, but a mentoring culture is when people are pouring into one another. And I love the idea that if you're going to become a successful partner at EY, your followership matters. Like, who have you helped guide? Who have you helped lead? If it's driven out of the HR department, it's a program. If it's driven out of the business, then it's your culture. Do yourself a favor and create and encourage within your own organization that culture of teaching and learning. And then lastly, while I'm shocked by the numbers of that EY study that prompted us to begin this entire podcast, I thought it was impressive that he wasn't, in part because of his experience, the number of women that he sees at EY who have played sports, but beyond that, in his own household. I loved the discussion of his daughter Anna at Colgate, and that she talked about her teams there and teams today, even in her current industry. I took away so much. I hope you did as well. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.